Hi, folks. I'm Susie Snodgrass, the artistic producer of the Cherry Creek Theater. I have the great pleasure of speaking with Colorado playwright Jeffrey Neuman, the author of The Headliners. Jeff, thank you so much for
It's a
joining
joy to
me.
actually see you and be a part
I
of it.
know, I know. I so appreciate your time. First of all, I have to tell you what an amazing piece you have written. It really, really resonates with me, with a lot of our viewers, and it's just a beautiful piece. So congratulations on
Thank you so much. When you start writing something like this, you've got no idea how it's going to land or where it's going to land. So that means a lot. So thank you very
that.
much.
Absolutely. I'm so proud that Cherry Creek Theater could produce this work. I just want to ask you a few questions about the headliners and about you as a human being. So we're just going to dive right in. Tell me what inspired you to write the story of the headliners, and what research did you do about these two real life vaudeville
Yeah. Well,
characters?
I have, for some reason, always loved vaudeville and vaudevillian convention. It's just this strange, beautiful, uniquely American art form that's always kind of drawn me in. And when I did my master's at University of Colorado at Boulder, I concentrated in musical theater history, really, really immersing myself in this particular form of entertainment. So I've always kind of had that. In my head, in my heart, in my blood. Um, and I'm kind of a geek, so I do a lot of reading on my own.
Aren't we
Um,
all?
I think so. I hope so. We're all near geeks, aren't we?
Yeah.
But yeah. So I do a lot of reading about that period and about that form of entertainment just for fun. And I was at the Tattered Cover, everybody's favorite local bookstore,
Mhm.
and I found this really, really wonderful book on their bargain table called The Ziegfeld Touch. And it was about Florenz Ziegfeld and his follies, which was not vaudeville. It was a review, a very different type of entertainment. But a lot of people who made their way in their ranks and kind of became popular and famous in vaudeville actually had starring turns in the Follies. Well, what was really cool about this book was at the end of it, there was a little biographical survey of all of the stars who had appeared on the Follies stage.
Mm,
And I was reading through that one day and I came across the name Eva Tanguay.
mm.
And Eva, even in this three paragraph little biographical survey, was intriguing to me. She sounded kind of like a mix of Madonna and Lady Gaga, but in the early 1900s. And when you look at pictures of her, she was crazier than Gaga, even at Gaga's most Gaga-ist. So it was really just one of those things where I was immediately drawn to her. And there was one line in the biographical survey that I thought was interesting. She fell into really, really ill health later in her life and was destitute. And she did her final interview with a reporter from behind a drawn screen. She was in her living room, and wanted to be heard and talked to, but she didn't want to be seen. And I thought that was such a striking image. So for years, I tried writing that play, the play about the reporter getting an interview, the last interview from Eva Tanguay, the most famous person in America for 17 years, who just kind of disappeared in the annals of theater history. Just couldn't find a way to make that play work. It just wasn't theatrical to me, so I just kind of shelved it. But then years later, a man named Andrew Erdman wrote a book about Eva Tanguay called The Queen of Vaudeville. And I was like, oh, well, maybe this will be my in. So I read the book cover to cover, and there were 3 pages in the book that just spoke to me. And it was about a publicity stunt that she had done with one of the other biggest stars of vaudeville. His name was Julian Eltinge,
Mhm.
and he was the world's leading foremost female impersonator. And when they took the stage, they did so in drag. She dressed as a man, and he dressed as a woman. And I thought, wow, there's something here. There's something
Mhm.
here. I felt like it could, to your point about resonance, I was
Mhm.
like, it speaks to gay marriage, civil unions, gender fluidity, sexuality, and power. And I was like, this might be the story I can tell. So I dove in, and that's the story I told.
Isn't it crazy how over a century ago it's still so relevant?
Mhm.
To me, it's like, wow. this could be of today's
Absolutely. And the thing that's really fascinating, and you asked about the other research that I did, because I knew a lot about vaudeville, but I didn't know a lot about turn of the century America. So I
headline.
really kind of immersed myself in what it meant to be a a person living in 1907, 1908. And interestingly, our conversations about gender and sexuality today are really, really closer to, I think, some of the conversations that people were having back then. That people didn't identify themselves by who they ultimately slept with, but by what gender they most identified with.
Mhm.
So, in this day when we really are exploring a lot of issues related to gender and identity, it feels like it is definitely speaking to audiences and culture today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you certainly did your research, and it certainly shows on the page, definitely.
Thank you.
Um, so, what inspired you to become a writer, Jeff? I mean, was there something? I know you already said in my blood, but was there like something significant, or has it always been there for you?
Obviously, I'm in it for the money. No,
Aren't we all? I mean,
and the
come on, baby.
prestige and the esteem. No, it's funny. I don't know where it came from, but I did always feel like it was there. I've always considered myself a writer, even when I wasn't writing. But thinking back to when I was a kid, I would often write sketches and skits for the kids in the neighborhood to
Oh,
perform,
wow.
and I have no idea where that came to because I came from because I really wasn't involved with or had a lot of access to theater in my early years. But for some reason, the idea of writing dialogue
Mhm.
for real people in real space and real time to perform for real people in real space and real time appealed to me immensely.
I love
And I tried lots of other types of writing, prose, poetry,
it.
creative nonfiction, but I just don't have the muscle for that.
Mhm.
It really was theater writing in particular that felt like it was an organic part of who I am.
Was there some favorite book that you had as a kid or a play, a writing that inspired you? I mean, what
Well, not necessarily I mean, I love books as a child, but
Mhm.
but I remember there was a performer that used to come into our elementary school, and her name was Pockets, and she was a clown, and I just that I think was kind of like a big springboard for me. There was something about Pockets that was magical, and there was something about when Pockets would come into the school that would create this energy and excitement with the kids, and I'm like, oh, it made me realize what live performance can be. But to your question about books, yeah, I've always been a reader, as you can probably tell behind me. Uh, but and probably the most meaningful book for me as a kid was Beverly Cleary's Henry Huggins,
Oh,
because it was the first chapter book I finished on my own, and I remember getting to page 100 and thinking that I was a rock star because I
mhm.
got to page 100 in a chapter book. So that
Aw.
kind of like inflamed that passion for reading for me.
Do you have a favorite author now?
Oh god.
Like, if you had to
Uh,
this is a good one. If you were on a desert island and you had to bring one book,
uh,
what would that be? And who
I
who would that be?
I don't know because for me books are one-time experiences. I rarely reread a book because there's something so unique and beautiful about that singular experience of reading it for the first time.
Mhm.
So I'm not a big rereader. So I think I'm going to have to cheat on my answer here and
That's okay.
say the
That's okay.
complete works of William Shakespeare.
Oh my gosh.
Well, because that way I get history and comedy and drama and pastoral. Because I've got a little bit of ADHD as a reader, and I don't like living in one space with one author
Wow,
continually.
that's
So,
fair. Yeah. So, if you had a dinner party, which authors would you invite? Living or passed on? Who would you
oh,
invite to your who would you wanna sit down and have conversations with?
that's fun. Well, I will tell you one other thing. I run all the literary events for the Denver Post. I was in the book industry for 20 years. So I've had the great pleasure and privilege of actually sitting down with a lot of my favorite authors over dinner, over cocktails, over an interview table. So that is a place I'm such I'm in such gratitude for being able to say that. But if I were to have a dinner party, I think I would have a big gay dinner party. I would have Angie Sean Greer, Armistead Maupin, Rita Mae Brown, Emma Donahue, and since we can open the pool to people who are no longer alive, I think Oscar Wilde would probably make a little appearance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, and along that line, if you could have one author read the headliners, living or passed on, who whom would you want to pass your work to?
That's actually an easy question for me to answer, and it's probably not an author that a lot of people who are book readers are going to be really familiar with. But if you're a theater goer, you probably would be. It would be Fred Ebb. And for those who don't know Fred, Fred was the lyricist and the librettist for, well, he wasn't the librettist for it, but he wrote the lyrics to Chicago, Cabaret, Kiss of the Spider Woman, the musical, Zorba. And Fred is an amazing, amazing lyricist and a wonderful librettist in his own right. He did a lot of book writing too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wrote my master's thesis on the musicals of John Kander and Fred Ebb, and one thing that always draws me to, because it's still a passion of mine, to their work is how steeped it is in vaudevillian convention. There is something that is very, very, it's just homage to prior forms of American musical entertainment, and vaudeville was very special to them.
I,
And when I was writing my thesis, I reached out to both John and Fred actually responded to me, and we became very, very, very good friends in the year that I did my research. And he wrote me the most wonderful letters on his Smith Corona typewriter because he never used a computer in his life.
oh,
We would speak on the phone very regularly, and and yeah, he's the one person that I'm sad that I don't get to share this with, because I think that he'd be proud, because in some ways this is really a part of their legacy as writers and what the gift that they've given to me as somebody who loves their work. So I wish I could share this with Fred, but unfortunately he passed almost 20 years ago. So but I have a feeling that he knows this is going on.
yeah, I have a feeling you're right about Jeff. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I just feel so blessed to have come across your work through our play reading committee and just getting this work done on Zoom and maybe getting it up on its feet next year, hopefully. I just love the piece. I think it resonates so well and will resonate with our patrons. And I just wanted to take a few moments to have people get to know who you are and why you wrote this beautiful piece. So
Thank you.
thank
And
you so much.
thank you not only for the opportunity to, to share the work with you, and to put a face to the playwright, because that's not something that we get a lot as playwrights. So this is very, very meaningful to me, and I just want to also thank Cherry Creek Theater for taking on this new enterprise and for doing a play reading series, because it's really important for uh, writers here in Colorado to feel represented and to see opportunities to become a more integral part of this community. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Jeff.